The spaceport at New Geneva was always busy, but that day it was louder than usual. The arrival gates were packed with families, reporters, and curious onlookers. A long-range fleet had just returned from deep space after years of travel, and people were eager to welcome their loved ones home. Commander Jace Calder stepped down the ramp slowly, his boots touching Earth's soil for the first time in 15 years. The air smelled different here, cleaner than the recycled oxygen he had lived on for so long, but heavier too, as if it carried the weight of all the memories he had left behind. He had expected to feel joy, relief, maybe even pride. Instead, he felt strange, like a visitor on his own planet. The sky was bright blue above him, but after years of staring into the endless black of space, the colors almost hurt his eyes. Jace walked quietly through the crowd, his dark flight. Jacket zipped up against the cool wind. People brushed past him, busy finding their own arrivals. A few glanced at his face and quickly looked away, assuming he was just another officer. No one recognized him, at least not yet. Near the end of the concourse, standing by the security checkpoint, was a tall woman with chestnut-brown hair tied neatly behind her head. She wore a simple gray coat and held a tablet in one hand, scrolling through what looked like passenger lists. Jace's heart gave a small jolt. He knew her. Dr. Alara Voss. She had been more than just a colleague back when they worked at the Helios Research Division. They had designed the first prototypes for faster-than-light drives together. She was the one who had convinced him to join. The Icarus mission, the one that had taken him far beyond the known territories. Back then, she had been the last person he spoke to before boarding. She had wished him luck. She had promised they would have a drink when he came back, but he never came back, at least not when he was supposed to. According to Earth's records, the Icarus had been lost. He was officially listed as presumed dead. And yet, here he was. Jace stepped closer. Alara glanced up briefly, saw him, and offered the polite smile she probably gave to dozens of arriving crew members she didn't know. Her eyes moved past him as she checked the next name on her tablet. Jace stopped 2 meters away. "Alara," he said, his voice low but steady. She froze. Slowly, she looked at him again. There was a flicker of confusion in her expression. He looked familiar, but her mind was struggling to connect the face with the memory. The years had changed him. His hair was shorter, his jaw more angular. There were lines around his eyes. That hadn't been there before. She took a small step forward, squinting. "Jace?" He nodded once. At first, she smiled in shock and relief, as if she had just seen a ghost come back to life. But then her gaze shifted. Her eyes locked onto his, and her expression changed. The color drained from her cheeks. The smile vanished. She took a slow, instinctive step back. Jace knew why. His eyes were no longer the eyes of the man she had known. His pupils were not round anymore. They were deep pools of shifting light, tiny constellations swirling inside them like living galaxies. Stars moved and shimmered within the dark centers, changing patterns with each blink. He didn't hide them. He couldn't. The Argath had made sure of that. Alara's voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to you?" Jace didn't answer right away. He let the moment hang in the air, the noise of the spaceport fading behind them. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. "It's a long story," he said, "and it didn't start here. It started far beyond the maps we knew. The Argath found me." Alara's brows drew together. "The Argath? That's a myth. Just old exploration rumors." He gave a faint smile that didn't reach his strange eyes. "They're real, and they changed me." The sound of shuttles landing echoed through the hangar. A group of returning crew passed them, laughing and calling, out to their families. But Alara barely noticed them. She was staring at Jace as if trying to decide whether she was speaking to the same man she had once known or something else wearing his face. "You disappeared for 15 years, she said slowly. "And now you show up here, alive, with this?" She gestured toward his eyes, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Jace? What are you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Still human," he said, "but not the same kind you remember." Her hands tightened around the tablet. "You need to tell me everything. Right now." Jace shook his head. "Not here. They'll be listening." "They? You'll understand. Soon." He glanced around the crowded spaceport, his gaze briefly flicking to the ceiling where security drones hovered. "The Argath didn't just send me back to visit. They sent me back with a message." Her eyes narrowed. "A message for me?" "For all of us." Ilara looked at him for a long moment, torn between curiosity and caution. The man standing in front of her looked like Jace Calder, spoke like him, even carried himself the same way. But those eyes, those shifting, impossible eyes, told her that something had happened out there in the dark, something no human had ever seen. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to know what it was. But she also knew she had no choice. "Fine," she said at last, her voice steady. "You'd better start explaining before I decide this is some elaborate trick." Jace smiled, faintly. "You always did like answers." He turned toward the exit. "Come with me, Ilara. We don't have much time." As they walked out of the spaceport together, the sunlight caught his strange eyes. For a moment, it was as if the sky itself reflected inside them, stars, planets, entire constellations that didn't exist in Earth's night sky. Ilara tried, not to stare, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just looking at a man. She was looking at a map, a living map to somewhere humanity had never been, and whatever had brought Jace Calder home after all these years. It was only the beginning. The city streets outside the New Geneva spaceport were alive with noise, honking air cars, the low hum of lev rails, the chatter of people who had no idea the universe was about to change. Jace Calder moved quickly through the crowd, Ilara Voss, walking close beside him. Her eyes stayed fixed on his strange, shimmering pupils whenever he glanced her way. She wanted to ask 100 questions, but his earlier words, "They'll be listening," kept her silent. They stopped at a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the main plaza. It was small, with a single window facing the street. Jace picked a corner table, far from other customers. Ilara sat across from him, placing her tablet down like she was ready to record every word. "All right," she said, leaning forward. "Talk. From the beginning." Jace didn't look at her right away. His gaze drifted toward the window as if he was making sure the world outside was still there. Only after a long pause did he speak. "The Icarus didn't crash," he began. "We were intercepted, pulled out of jump space by something that wasn't human technology." Ilara frowned. "An attack?" "No. A capture. They wanted us alive." His voice was calm, but there was a weight in it, like every word carried years of silence. "The Argath are not like anything we've imagined. They're not humanoid. They don't live on planets. They exist in structures, moving star cities that drift between systems, following the great currents of dark space." Ilara crossed her arms. "And you expect me to believe they've been out there all this time? And we never detected them?" Jace looked her in the eye. The shifting constellations inside his pupils seemed to pulse faintly, as if reacting to her doubt. "They didn't want to be detected. They have ways of bending light, hiding entire fleets behind shadows. They could watch us for centuries, and we'd never know." She felt a small shiver crawl up her spine. "Why take you?" Jace leaned forward slightly. "Because they needed someone who could survive what was coming." Ilara's brows knitted together. What's coming? He glanced out the window again, as though the answer might be hiding in the clouds. The Shroud. A force that consumes everything, stars, planets, life. I don't know if it's alive or just a natural event, but the Argath treat it like an enemy. They've been fighting it for longer than our species has existed. Ilara's scientist mind immediately searched for logic. If they've been fighting it that long, why haven't they stopped it? Jace's lips tightened. Because it can't be stopped, only delayed, and now the Shroud is coming here. She leaned back in her chair, staring at him. For years, she had studied distant stars, but nothing in her career had prepared her for this kind of conversation. So these eyes, she gestured toward him. This is what they did to you? Jace nodded slowly. The Argath gave me a navigation system. Not mechanical, not even biological in the way we understand it. My eyes are connected to their star maps, records of paths through space that only they know. It lets me see currents, gravitational tides, routes through regions where normal ships would be torn apart. Why you? Ilara asked. Why not one of their own? Jace hesitated. Because their own can't survive the Shroud space for long. They burn out. They told me humans are different. Something about the way our minds process distance and memory. They believe we can last longer in the Shroud than they can. Ilara studied him carefully. So they changed you, altered you, and sent you back here. Yes. For what? Jace's gaze locked onto hers. To lead us. Her pulse quickened. Lead us where? To the place they can't go, the only place to strike at the Shroud before it reaches Earth. He leaned closer. They didn't send me back for a reunion. They sent me back with a mission. And they said I'd have help here. Someone who could understand the science and translate it for our people. Ilara blinked, then pointed to herself. Me, you, Jace said simply. They knew your name. Her fingers tapped against the table. That's impossible. No alien could know me personally. A faint smile touched Jace's lips. You underestimate how much they see. Before she could answer, a faint hum passed over the cafe. Not from inside, outside. Jace's head turned sharply toward the street. A small drone, sleek and black, hovered across the road, scanning the building with an invisible beam. They found us, Jace said quietly. Who? Ilara asked, glancing nervously toward the window. Not the Argath. The people here who don't want this getting out. He stood, moving with calm precision. We need to leave. Now. Ilara grabbed her tablet, following him through the back. Exit into a narrow service alley. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings. She hurried to keep up with his quick steps. Jace, she said, her voice low. If you're telling the truth, then Earth is in danger. We can't just run from— I'm not running, he said. I'm making sure we can talk before they silence us. The alley opened into a quiet street near the industrial sector. Jace stopped by an old delivery van, keyed in a code on its side panel, and the door slid open. Inside was a small hidden compartment filled with star charts, data slates, and a single strange object that looked like a sphere made of liquid metal frozen in place. Ilara stared at it. What is that? An Argath beacon, Jace replied. It's how we contact them when we're ready. She stepped inside the van, her mind racing. Ready for what? He met her gaze again, and in his eyes she saw not just stars, but a deep and unsettling truth, like looking through a window into another galaxy. Ready to save our world, he said. Ilara swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. She didn't know if she believed every detail, but she knew one thing. Whatever had happened to Jace Calder out there in the dark, it had changed him forever, and now it was going to change her too. The industrial sector of New Geneva was quiet at night. Most workers had gone home, and only the hum of automated machinery echoed between the warehouses. The old delivery van sat in the shadows, its surface coated with dust so it blended in with its surroundings. Inside, Jace Calder and Ilara Voss studied the star charts spread across the small table. The faint light from a single lamp cast long shadows, making the shifting constellations in Jace's eyes seem even more alive. Ilara tapped one of the charts. "These routes, they don't match anything in our databases. Some of these stars aren't even recorded." "They're real," Jace said quietly. "They're just not in your visible range. The Argath can see through regions of space our telescopes can't detect. They map what lies behind the black." She leaned back, trying to process his words. "And the shroud?" Jace reached for a different chart. This one was marked with a thick, dark arc that cut across multiple star systems like a storm front. "This is its path," he said. "The Argath have tracked it for millennia. They say it moves like a tide, swallowing everything in its way." Ilara frowned. "It doesn't make sense. Even a supernova can't travel like that." "That's because it isn't just energy or debris," Jace replied. "It's something else. The Argath believe it feeds on stars, burns them out until nothing is left." Ilara stared at the black arc. "And Earth is in its path?" Jace's gaze dropped. "Yes, not immediately, but soon, maybe within a decade, maybe less." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the lamp. Ilara's hands rested on the table, but her mind was far away, imagining a future where Earth's sun went dark. "How sure are you?" she asked finally. Jace looked at her, and his strange eyes caught the lamplight. "I've seen it. I was there, on the edge of its reach. Whole systems gone dark, their planets frozen. I piloted through the remains." Ilara swallowed hard. "If that's true, then why hasn't anyone else seen it?" "They don't know where to look," he said. "The shroud moves through regions that bend light and twist time. It hides itself until it's too late. That's why the Argath watch the currents. They can read the signs before it arrives." Before Ilara could reply, a faint vibration passed through the floor of the van. She glanced around, uneasy. "What was that?" Jace was already moving, toward the window. He peered out, scanning the shadows. "We're not alone." From the far end of the street, two silent, black hover vehicles glided into view. They had no markings, no lights, only the faint shimmer of their anti-grav fields. Ilara's voice was tight. "Who are they?" Jace's jaw hardened. "People who want this buried. They'll erase the threat before they admit it exists." The vehicles stopped, and their side doors slid open. Figures in dark uniforms stepped out, moving in precise formation toward the van. Jace grabbed the liquid metal sphere from the table and slipped it into a sealed case. "We need to leave. Now." They exited through the rear door, moving quickly along the shadowed side of the warehouse. The night air was cold, and Ilara's breath came in short bursts as she tried to keep pace. "Where are we going?" she asked. "There's a place outside the city," Jace said without slowing. "Somewhere they can't track us. The Argath prepared it before I returned." They reached a side street and ducked into an old service tunnel. The ground sloped downward, the air growing cooler and damper as they descended. The sound of distant machinery faded behind them until there was only the echo of their footsteps. After several minutes, they emerged into a hidden chamber deep beneath the city. It was filled with strange equipment, smooth metal surfaces, glowing, lines and shapes that seemed too precise to be human-made. Ilara's eyes widened. This is Argath technology?" Jace nodded. "They call it an observation post. They've been here longer than you think." She moved toward one of the glowing panels. Symbols she didn't recognize shifted across the surface, but when she touched it, the display changed, showing a vast star field, A section of it pulsed with a faint red glow. Jace joined her, pointing to the red region. "That's the omen." Ilara frowned. "Omen?" "It's what the Argath call the first sign of the shroud, a ripple in the gravitational field. 2. Small for our instruments, but large enough to be noticed by those who know where to look." She stared at the display. "And you're telling me this ripple is near us?" "Not near yet," Jace said, "but closer than it should be. It means the shroud's advance has accelerated." Ilara's mind raced. "If this is real, then we need to warn the United Earth Council. They can prepare defenses." "No," Jace interrupted firmly. "If we go to them now, they'll lock the information away. They'll call it classified and do nothing until it's too late. We need to act first." Ilara turned to him, frustration clear in her eyes. "And what exactly do you expect us to do, Jace? 2 people can't fight something that eats stars." "We won't be 2 people," he said. "We'll have a crew. People willing to go beyond the borders. The Argath can provide routes, but only I can guide a human ship through them. That's why they sent me back." She looked at him for a long moment. Part of her still wanted to believe this was all some elaborate trick, a story built on impossible claims. But another part, the part that had spent her life chasing the unknown, was starting to believe. Finally, she asked, "When do we leave?" Jace's strange eyes seemed to brighten. "Soon. The omen means we have less time than I thought." Outside, the city slept, unaware that far beyond the visible stars, something was moving toward them. The first ripple of the shroud had already begun. And on Earth, in a hidden chamber beneath the streets, 2 humans stood at the edge of a decision that could change the fate of their species. The hidden Argath post beneath New Geneva became their base. Jace Calder and Ilara Voss worked there in secret, studying the star maps, scanning for shroud activity, and planning the journey that could decide Earth's future. But they weren't the only ones watching the sky. Reports began to surface, quietly, without making the news. Stargazers and deep space observatories were noticing strange readings, sudden drops in starlight, unexplainable distortions in gravity, and communication blackouts between remote outposts. Most scientists dismissed them as equipment failures, but Jace knew better. The shroud was already brushing against the edge of human space. It wasn't only the shroud they had to worry about. Earth's own leadership was moving against them. The 2 black hover vehicles that had tracked them before were just the beginning. Drones began circling the industrial sector at night, scanning for hidden signals. Encrypted messages from unknown sources appeared on Ilara's tablet, warning her to cease contact with Calder. "They know you're alive," Ilara said one night, scrolling through yet another anonymous warning. "They've always known," Jace replied calmly, his eyes on the glowing Argath display. "They just didn't expect me to be a problem." "A problem?" she asked. "To them, the Argath aren't allies. They're an unknown force," Jace said. "And humans fear what they can't control. If the Council admits the shroud is real, they also admit they need help. That's something they don't want to do." Ilara sighed, rubbing her temples. "So while the universe is literally eating itself, we're stuck in a political game." Jace gave a small, humorless smile. "Welcome to the Quiet War. Recruitment." Over the next weeks, Jace began assembling a team, quietly, carefully. He reached out to old contacts, a retired fleet engineer named Marcus Hale, a skilled pilot called Tessa Rourke, and a communications expert, Ishan Malik, who had once decoded encrypted transmissions between rival colonies. Each of them had their own reasons for joining. Some owed Jace favors, others simply believed in him. Ilara was cautious at first, unsure if they could trust outsiders with the truth. But one by one, as Jace explained the mission, they agreed to help. Still, secrecy was everything. The team met in abandoned hangars, unused service tunnels, and once in the empty cargo hold of a decommissioned freighter. Every move was made, to avoid drawing attention from both the Council and the unknown group hunting them. The towers one night, Jace brought Alara to the far end of the Argath post, where a holographic projection flickered to life. It showed a barren world, dimly lit, by a dying sun. Across its surface stood massive black towers, so tall their tops vanished into the thin clouds. "What is this?" Alara asked. "A human colony," Jace said. "Or what's left of it." The towers were built by a different species, not the Argath. The Argath call them the Wardens. Their purpose is simple, to limit the growth of civilizations. They keep species from advancing too far too fast. Alara stared at the image. "That's horrifying." "It's also why this is a quiet war," Jace said. "The Argath believe the Wardens are allies of the Shroud, or at least they're not stopping it. The Shroud devours life. The Wardens weaken civilizations so they can't fight back." "And now they're here?" Alara asked, a chill running through her. "Not here yet," Jace said. "But some of their technology has already been detected in our space. If the Wardens decide humanity is a threat, they'll act before the Shroud arrives. Sabotage a week later, their fears became reality. The Argath post went dark for nearly 3 hours. Lights flickered, systems failed, and the air temperature dropped. When power returned, Jace found that one of their star maps had been erased. "This wasn't an accident," he said, scanning the console. "Someone breached the system from inside Earth's network." Alara clenched her fists. "Which means they know about the omen." "They know more than that," Jace replied. "They know we're leaving. From that moment, the team worked faster." Marcus repaired an old long-range vessel they had purchased under a false registry. Tessa and Ishan configured its navigation to work with the data from Jace's eyes. Alara compiled a condensed version of the Argath maps, careful to keep the most sensitive routes hidden. But even as they prepared, Jace could feel the Shroud drawing closer. At night, when he closed his eyes, the constellations within them shifted, showing him the currents of deep space, and each time the dark arc of the Shroud was nearer. The first move one evening, Alara entered the base to find Jace standing in front of the Argath beacon, the liquid metal sphere. It pulsed faintly as though alive. "They're ready for us," Jace said without turning. Alara stepped closer. "The Argath?" "Yes. They've given us coordinates for a rendezvous point. But once we leave, there's no coming back until it's over." Ilara's voice was steady. "Then we go." Jace finally looked at her, a rare flicker of approval in his expression. "Good. Because the quiet war isn't going to stay quiet much longer." That night, as the city lights glowed far above them, the team gathered at the hidden hangar. The ship waited, sleek and silent, its hull painted in dull gray to hide it from sensors. From a distance, it looked like any other cargo hauler. But inside, it carried a navigation system unlike any in human history. Guided by the living star maps in Jace's eyes, they loaded supplies, sealed the hatch, and prepared for departure. Outside, somewhere in the shadows, watchers from the Council and the unknown Black Hover units searched for them. But by the time those watchers realized what was happening, the ship would already be gone, slipping into the hidden routes the Argath had given them, heading straight toward the darkness where the Shroud waited. The quiet war was over. The real war was about to begin. The ship, Aurora's Edge, drifted in high orbit above a nameless moon. Below them, gray dust plains stretched as far as the eye could see. Above them, the stars were strangely dim, as if a shadow had touched the sky. In the command chair, Jace. Calder adjusted the navigation display. His eyes shimmered faintly, mapping invisible routes no human had ever seen. The Argath data merged with his vision, showing not just stars but the hidden currents of deep space, the invisible rivers that could carry them closer to the Shroud. The crew was silent. This was the point of no return. Marcus Hale, the engineer, broke the quiet first. Engines are steady, shield grids running at full capacity. Tessa Rourke, their pilot, kept her hands lightly on the controls. I still think we're crazy for flying into the thing everyone else runs from. That's what makes us different, Jace said without looking away from the map. Ilara Voss sat at the science station reviewing sensor readouts. The gravitational readings are already strange. We're not even inside yet. That's because we're close to the boundary, Jace explained. The Argath call it the Veil. Once we cross, normal space rules stop making sense. Ishan Malik, their communications expert, glanced up. And if we get lost in there? Jace's gaze was calm. Then we don't come back. That's why we follow the currents exactly. The crossing, the Aurora's edge drifted toward what looked like empty space, but on Jace's display, the blackness ahead swirled with faint patterns, eddies and spirals of gravity invisible to the naked eye. His eyes flickered, adjusting to the Argath patterns, and he gave a short command. Engage. Tessa pushed the controls forward. The ship shuddered as they passed the invisible threshold. The stars vanished. Outside the viewports, there was no light, no planets, no familiar constellations, only a vast shifting darkness that seemed alive, moving in slow, rolling waves. Strange glimmers appeared far in the distance, like sparks under deep water. Shroud space, Jace said quietly. Marcus stared at the display. Feels like we're inside something shadow. Ilara checked her instruments. Normal sensors are useless. I'm switching to Argath readings. The panels lit with alien symbols, and slowly faint shapes appeared. Twisting clouds, massive arcs of dark matter, and narrow channels of relative safety. Jace guided Tessa through one of those channels. Stay exactly on course. Even a small drift could take us into a dead zone. First signs of the enemy hours passed in tense silence. Then something moved in the darkness. At first it looked like another cloud, but as it drew closer, its outline sharpened. It was a massive structure, black, spined, and pulsing faintly with inner light. Ilara leaned forward. Is that alive? Jace's voice was low. Not alive in the way we think. The Argath call them shroud spawns, fragments of the main force. They drift ahead, clearing space of anything that resists. The structure turned slowly, as if sensing them. It's locking on, Ishan warned. Tessa's hands tightened on the controls. Do we run? No, Jace said firmly. If we break from the current, we'll be trapped. Stay the course. The spawn moved closer. Thin strands of light reached from it like searching fingers. One brushed against the ship's shields, making the hull tremble. Marcus checked the readings. Shields are holding, for now. Jace's eyes shifted rapidly, following the current. We're almost past it. Hold steady. The strand pressed harder against the shields, but then just as suddenly it pulled back. The massive shape drifted away, disappearing into the black. The crew let out slow, shaky breaths. That, Marcus muttered, was way too close. The heart of darkness, they pressed on, deeper into shroud space. The currents narrowed, twisting between enormous shapes that looked like broken planets, their surfaces frozen and cracked. Ilara recorded everything, knowing that even if they failed, this data might someday help others. Why does it leave these fragments? She asked quietly. It doesn't leave them, Jace replied. It eats the stars, but the planets are sometimes too heavy to consume all at once. They drift here, broken and empty. Hours turned into a full day. The crew moved in shifts, but no one truly rested. The darkness pressed against their minds, making them feel like they were sinking into something endless. At one point, Ishan began murmuring quietly to himself. When Ilara asked, he admitted it felt like voices were whispering just outside his hearing. Jace didn't seem surprised. The shroud is more than matter and energy, It affects thought. That's why no one can survive here without guidance. The pulse on the second day, they reached their target coordinates. Ahead, deep within the darkness, a faint sphere of light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. That's it, Jace said. The Argath marker. It's the closest safe point to the Shroud's center. From here, they'll launch the counterstrike. Tessa narrowed her eyes. If this is the safe point, I don't want to see the unsafe ones. Marcus checked the systems. We're low on reserve power. If we have to run, it'll be tight. Then we won't run, Jace said. He activated the beacon case, and the liquid metal sphere inside began to ripple. Light spread from it, matching the pulse of the marker ahead. Contact moments later, the space around them shimmered. Shapes emerged, not ships in the human sense, but enormous, flowing constructs of silver and blue light. They moved like living things, yet each one carried the precision of a machine. The Argath, Elara breathed. Jace stood. We're here to confirm the path and prepare the strike. A deep vibration filled the ship, not sound, but something, felt in the bones. The Argath were speaking, their language passing directly into thought. Elara gripped the edge of her console. They're asking if we're ready. Jace nodded once, his strange eyes reflecting the pulsing light. Tell them, we are. The Argath ships formed a circle around the Aurora's edge. Beyond them, in the farthest reaches of the darkness, a new light appeared. Not gentle like the marker, but cold and sharp, spreading in jagged lines. The Shroud, Jace said. It knows we're here. The crew stared into the black horizon as the light grew. The final stage of their mission was about to begin. The black horizon rippled like water as the Shroud approached. It was not a ship, not a storm, but something far larger, an endless wall of moving darkness, lit from within by flashes of cold light. Inside the Aurora's edge, every member of the crew stood at their stations, silent. The Argath ships around them pulsed with bright patterns, communicating in ways no human mouth could speak. Jace Calder stood in the center of the bridge, his strange, constellation-filled eyes fixed on the oncoming wall. The Argath are asking, if we are ready, Elara Voss said quietly, translating the thought echoes that filled her mind. Jace nodded. Tell them yes. Tell them we'll lead. The plan the Argath's counterstrike was not about destroying the Shroud. That was impossible. The goal was to weaken it, to force it to slow down so that Earth and other nearby systems would have more time. Jace had been chosen because his eyes, altered by the Argath, could see a thin path inside the Shroud itself, a current that led to what the Argath believed was its heart. If they struck there, even a small disruption might delay its advance for years. But it was a one-way journey. The deeper they went, the harder it would be to return. Into the heart Aurora's edge. Follow my heading exactly, Jace said. His voice was calm, steady. Tessa Rourke tightened her grip on the controls. Understood. The ship moved forward, breaking formation with the Argath vessels. As they crossed into the Shroud, light disappeared. The view outside the windows became pure darkness, except for thin strands of pale glow weaving through it. The currents only Jace could see. Stay on that line, Jace instructed. Do not drift. The crew obeyed without question. Even without seeing the path, they could feel it. The air grew heavier and the hull groaned as if the space around them pressed inward. Voices whispered faintly at the edge of hearing. But the words made no sense. Ishan Malik gritted his teeth and focused on his instruments. Communications are fading. It's just us now. The core, after what felt like hours, a shape began to form in the darkness ahead. It was a sphere, larger than any planet they had seen, glowing faintly with shifting colors. Blue, red, gold, like a giant living eye. That's it, Jace said softly. The core. Alara's breath caught. It's Beautiful, beautiful. Can still be deadly, Marcus Hale muttered, checking the ship's power reserves. We've got one shot at this. The plan was simple. Deploy the Argath beacon into the core's gravity well. Once activated, it would release a pulse of energy tuned to disrupt the shroud's movement. But the closer they got, the stronger. The pull would be. The push. Approaching drop point, Tessa called. Jace's eyes shifted rapidly, tracking invisible forces. We need to get closer. 30 seconds more. The pull of the core grew stronger. The ship's engines roared as Marcus fed them maximum power. Warning lights flashed across the console. Shields down to 70%, Ilara shouted. Hold steady, Jace ordered. At the exact moment the path narrowed, Jace gave the command. Now, drop the beacon. Marcus slammed the release. The silver sphere shot out into the darkness, immediately drawn toward the glowing core. As it spun, it began to ripple and shine, sending thin waves of light into the surrounding dark. The pulse. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep vibration passed through the ship, not from the engines, but from space itself. The core flared, sending out a massive wave of shimmering light that spread in every direction. The darkness around them seemed to shudder. The shroud is slowing, Ilara said, reading the data. But the celebration lasted only seconds. The wave also pushed against the Aurora's edge, dragging them toward the core. We're caught, Tessa shouted. Engines full reverse, Marcus yelled. The ship strained, but the pull was too strong. The core's light was growing brighter, almost blinding. The choice Jace knew there was only one way out. The Argath had warned him from the beginning. The navigation gift in his eyes was not permanent. It was a connection to their star maps. And like a candle, it would burn out if pushed too far. If he poured everything into one final navigation burst, he could lead the ship back to safety. But it would destroy the connection forever. Jace, Ilara said, seeing the look in his face. What are you thinking? He smiled faintly. I'm thinking I made a promise to get us home. Don't you dare, she began, but he had already closed his eyes. The burnout. When Jace opened them again, the constellations inside flared brighter than ever before. The crew gasped as the walls of darkness outside split into a clear path, glowing like a silver river through the void. Follow that line, Jace said, his voice calm but strained. Tessa obeyed instantly. The Aurora's edge surged forward, the engines screaming as they fought against the pull. The glowing river twisted and turned, and each time Jace adjusted their heading, the path shifted just enough to keep them alive. The light in his eyes began to fade, star by star. His breathing grew heavy, but he never looked away from the course. At last, they burst through the veil. Stars reappeared overhead, shining bright and clear. The pull of the core was gone. They were safe. The aftermath. The Argath ships appeared. Moments later, their silver forms pulsing with patterns of approval. Through the thought echoes, Ilara felt their message. The strike was successful. The shroud has slowed, but when she turned to Jace, her smile faded. The light in his eyes was gone. His pupils were just human now, dark, still, and ordinary. You did it, she whispered. He nodded, though his voice was softer than before. The Argath connection. It's gone. I can't see their maps anymore. You saved us, Ilara said firmly. That's what matters. The message. Back before leaving, the Argath gave them one final gift, a transmission channel that could send a message far beyond human space. Jace dictated only 5 words. We do not abandon our own. The message went out into the stars. Days. Later, as they returned to Earth, the Argath ships vanished back into the deep, but new signals began to appear on long-range sensors. Dozens of messages in perfect human Morse code repeating 2 words. Understood. Watching. Earth was safe for now. The shroud would come again one day, but when it did, humanity would not face it alone. And though Jace Calder's eyes longer held the stars, the crew knew one truth. It wasn't the Argath's maps that had saved them. It was the human will to fight for each other, no matter the cost.